to another episode of the Ideas Exchange podcast presented by InXpress. I'm your host, Paul Castleberry. This is the podcast. We talk business, we talk entrepreneurship, being a franchisor or a franchisee, tech, marketing, whatever we could cram in between all those categories. We try to talk about that here on this podcast. And my guest today is another one of our very own from the InXpress network, Mr. Richie Winn. Richie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Paul. I'm excited to be here.
I am as well. We had another one of your cohorts on previously, Mr. Tom Morris. Maybe we
Yes.
can dive into that a little bit further on the show. But let's talk about you. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your background, all that good stuff.
Yeah. No, for those of you listening that, may not be overly familiar with our franchise, my name is Richie Winn. I am a sales rep for franchise 147 here out of Provo, Utah. I started with Tom about 6 years ago, did lead generation for him for about a year and a half while I was finishing up a statistics degree. And then once we got towards the end of that, he talked me into coming to sell for him. And now, here we are. We're growing the business, and we have a couple more reps that I'm managing, and it's been great.
He's being very modest, and he's not touching on the fact that I wanted him to. You're one of the top sales guys, account executives in the organization. Congrats to that. That's a huge win.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, it's like I said, it's been a fun ride. We've had a lot of success. We got a great team over here.
You most certainly do, and it keeps growing, like you said. So the topic I wanted to touch on with you today, and I can't think of anyone else who could really dive into this with me, other than yourself, is just sales cycle. And when I was researching this topic, I pulled up the just kind of the typical definition of a sales cycle. I'm going to read that really quick. It says a sales cycle is the repeatable and tactical process salespeople follow to turn a lead into a customer. With a sales cycle in place, you always know your next move and where each lead is within the cycle. It can also help you repeat your success or determine how to improve. So, Richie, let's start with that, as that's our definition of a sales cycle. What's your knee-jerk reaction to that and this kind of a topic?
Yeah, that's a really good question. As salespeople and those of us that have been doing it for a while, we can, if you look at every individual interaction, relationship with each customer, it seems so different, so unique. But if you do boil it down, to its bare bones, the relationships start and continue the same way, for all of them.
Mhm.
Um, when we talk about sales cycle, there's obviously a process we follow over here at our franchise. We really heavily emphasize consultative selling, more kind of I guess you could say, an empathetic
Mm.
approach to the customer. Putting the customer, being in the customer's shoes. Looking at their business as if it were our own, and
Mhm.
then following up with them like crazy. So within that, I mean, that's just stuff we emphasize within it. The sales process really for us, from the first time you talk to them till the time you close the business. And we don't, an activation is not, the end of the sales process. In our business, sales process really never ends. It's a residual business. People ship every day. You're really selling to new customers and your existing customers every single day. You're selling them to continue to shipping with you, whether that's through service or new products. And speaking to new products, adding new products and really kind of fleshing out what we can do for them. And really that happens from the time that you introduce yourself to them, whether you're talking to them on the phone or you're talking to them in person. The very first thing that you got to sell is yourself.
Mm.
The person on the other end of the phone, the person you're shaking your hand, they gotta like you. If they
Mm.
don't like you, they don't really care what you have to say. So, um, really just be personable. Like I mentioned, try to be empathetic. Be polite. Don't be overly pushy. Pick up on social cues. And from there, it kind of goes downhill. You get to know them. You sell them on the company and the idea of what it is. Figure out what products that they may need. Kind of, as you're talking to them, you're kind of running through your head of the service type menus. Like, all right, they do that X, Y, Z. We can help them with, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
So you go through product, and then one thing we really emphasize, and it's been really successful for us, and that we've emphasized with our newer reps is try to save price for the last thing that you talk about.
Mm.
Um, Price, and then, honestly, on the e-commerce side, we try to save, the software integration for the end too.
Mm.
I know I'm sure other sales reps can empathize and know exactly what we're talking about with ShipStation block and live ratings and that,
Mhm.
and whatnot. It's pretty crazy, once if the person really likes you, if tell them about a product or service you have, they feel they can really, help.
Mhm.
If you've done it right, it may not always work out, but they're much more motivated to find a stopgap solution or present something that may not be as smooth as long as you're solving a bigger pain point.
Yeah.
Um, that's a really long-winded answer to what is the sales process, but it's just something I think about a lot and that we practice a lot. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no, that I think that was great. There was a couple of things, couple of nuggets I got out of there. One is you're not really going through a step-by-step process, rather you're building a relationship versus a sale, if you will,
right.
if we put that in
Mhm.
quotations. And then the next thing, which I thought was pretty cool, and maybe there's a lot of salespeople out there that don't think of it this way, but that price aspect of it, or that integration part that you were talking about, save it for the very end, because I think a lot of people want to do that right out of the gate. Well, you're saying no, let's put that at bay. Let's build the relationship first and then go from there. Yeah, did I follow that right?
Yeah, and that's something, I've really learned from Tom, honestly, that's what he does, that's how he operates. Before I wasn't, as well trained by him as I have been now,
Hmm.
I'd go into those e-commerce appointments, be like, in the back of my mind, I'd be like, oh, we don't have the software integrations, and no, we don't have this and that. When, you're worried about it, but your customer's not worried about it right now. So why are you
Mm.
worrying about it yet? And that's the whole thing that really carries the whole sale is the relationship. And you're still moving it across, moving the ball across different yard lines, but you're doing it through the relationship, not necessarily pure persuasion. It's still persuasion,
Yeah.
still sales, but you're doing it based off something really solid. These people trust you, they find you credible, and they want to work with you. And that is, a very, very solid foundation. You'll have customers for years upon years if you can build that at the beginning.
Yeah, I think I've heard Tom say before, it's your solution providers. You're finding the
Right.
solution that end user needs, and solving that, or filling that gap, if you will. Um, One of the things that I wanted to touch on when we were reading the definition or looking this up, it talks about determine how to improve in the sales cycle. And I kind of wanted to ask you that, because I remember back in October at one of our sales conventions, you were talking about improving the process and trying different things and building upon what you were doing. How do you improve your sales cycle or your sales process?
It's really just trial and error. If you don't do it, if you don't go out there and fail and find out what doesn't work, you never know, what does.
Hmm.
And it's just a matter of getting over that call avoidance, or being nervous about walking in that door. Oh, I don't want to tell this customer something bad happened. If you kind of tiptoe around it, and you're like, oh well, I put this process, I think it's great, but I don't know if it works. If you don't put it to practice, you'll never know if you're headed the right way. And I think really just through trial and error, different approaches with, different types of people and customers too. Like I mentioned earlier, you break down everything down to the bare bones. The process is the same at its
Mm.
core, but whether it's a different industry, different person, and different personality, there's different approaches. There's, soft approaches. You can be a bit more aggressive, maybe a bit bolder, maybe a bit more, you know, reserved, and you'll never know what's going to work for who until you try it. And
Mm,
more often than not, you're gonna get it wrong the first few times. But just
yeah.
because you get it wrong the first few times doesn't mean that customer's not gonna work out. And that kind of leads back to the relationship to
Yeah.
where, you don't have to be perfect as a sales rep or an organization. But if you have that relationship there, it really all just ties back to that.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I like the term fail fast so you can move forward, right?
Yes,
Fail as fast as you
absolutely.
can.
Yeah.
Well, you were talking about your the approach, if it's a new client, new person, whatever the case may be, how do you determine that approach? I mean, is it something you do some research beforehand, or do you just kind of feel it out when you're there? What's your take on that?
Really, whether it's over the phone or in person, I don't do a lot of research on the companies before. I have tried it before. I don't really find it overly effective. And here's the reason why, is because I'll approach it initially the same. Say, hey, my name's Richie. With InXpress, I, help, companies with, all different types of shipments. And I'm curious, what do you guys do as a business? I'd love to see what areas we may be able to help you out with. And I want them to tell me. Like, I could go up and see, oh, ABC company, they ship pressure gauges all over the world, and here's where they ship to. This is the shopping cart. I found sometimes when I've done that, it kind of pigeonholes my thinking
Mm,
on what opportunities we can get. I'm like, all right, I'm going to ask these guys about their, international exports. They might only be doing 3 to 4 a week, but you may miss out on an opportunity of them, they import all the stuff from China, and it could be tons of different imports, and, I really just like to get a full picture painted by them because 'cause they're the ones there every day doing it,
mm.
and they typically bring up their most the biggest pain point within their logistics process.
So you're kind of leaving it open ended, right? To let
Yeah.
them kind of uncover the pain point. I like that. Yeah, I've never really heard it approached that way before. Um, so there's typical steps in a sales cycle. Like looking up the definition again, it listed out: find leads, connect with leads, qualify leads, present to prospects, overcome objections, close the deal, nurture new customers, rinse and repeat. Are you that rigid in your sales cycle? Like, do you follow a step by step process, or you keep it kind of nimble?
I try to keep it nimble. If like I said, they're all free flowing. They're all a little bit different, but at the end of the day, whatever I close, they follow those exact steps, you just mentioned, and it
Mhm.
is sequential. It's not jumping out of order, but I don't like I said, every customer is gonna work, move at their own pace. I may
Mm.
walk into somewhere or call someone, they're like, "Yes, I have this shipment right now. I've been looking for someone to move it. I need you to move it right now." And it might sound crazy, but it does happen.
Lucky
It really
you.
does happen. Yeah. Well, and I was a skeptic too when the people used to tell me that. It doesn't happen every day, but, if you're out there calling, pounding the pavement, whatever, it'll happen, especially if you're just asking people for shipments. "Hey, what can I move today for you?" They're like, "Oh, well, now that you mention it." Um, and then, they may ship ones, and then you have to go back and develop them a bit more because. Or, there's customers I've pursued for a year, not aimlessly, but just because we've been working on projects or they were getting started a little bit. They may have not been ready at that time. Now I'm not calling them every single day for a year or every other day or even every
Yeah.
week. Because I'm sure that would be really annoying for my customers if I did that.
Yeah.
Um, but you develop them over time. Those steps, one of the step may happen every other month, but no, it can get there, and some of those people are, my top customers, and it took me about 18 months to develop, and 2.5 years later, they're right at the top, and they're solid as ever, so,
Yeah.
um, it'll all follow the steps eventually. Um, there is you have to kind of funnel them towards there, but if you try to herd them too aggressively, you may push them away a little bit, and then the
Mm.
relationship starts off a bit rockier. Like, okay, this guy's just here to push shipments. Um, so that may not be true, for everyone's experience in the network, but here that's the approach we take.
Love it. That's fair. Is it fair to say that's the unicorn? I've got 700 pallets, got to go out today, and I do this every week. Take care of it. Is that the it?
Well, that type of volume, no, I wish that would happen. It's usually your guy who's never shipped a pallet before, and he has
Yeah.
no idea what to do with it.
Yeah. Well, you guys step in and you handle it. So with your new
Exactly.
sales reps and your account executives, what's some of the advice or maybe the pitfalls you steer them to avoid? Or yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Um, kind of what you were alluding to is the fail fast.
Mm,
With new sales reps, everyone's gung ho, everyone's ready to go, everyone wants to have their, email template drafted. Everyone who gives them an email address, they want to email them right away, and they're super bummed out when they email 100 people, no one responds.
mm,
Um, so, we come in, we train them about the products, services, give them advice, make calls with them, go on appointments with them, but really kind of give them the freedom to sell in their own way. And then as we go through prospects, we go through, opportunities, quantify that, talk about relationships they're building. We talk about what's working for them, what they're stuck on, maybe why what they're doing isn't working. And usually they can see, say, "Oh yeah, I remember when you told me that would probably be a waste of my time a few weeks ago." And I was like, "Yeah, no, I knew it was a waste of time,
I
but
told you so. I told you so.
yeah, like, but the only way you can know that and internalize that, for the most part, hopefully listen to some things that we say, um, is to go out and fail and realize it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I'm a strong believer in everyone sells a little bit different. So pushing a very rigid method of it, as long as they're following those steps that we're talking about, like
Hmm.
underneath, you know, um, everything they're doing, it's still following that, and they're building strong customers, um, that are solid, pay, consistent. Who cares how you're selling, right? If
Hmm.
it's if the numbers are there, doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Great advice. Well, we're coming up to the end of our time together. I just want to kind of leave it open for you. Any other thoughts or piece of advice you want to throw out there for anyone that's sitting in your seat or, aspiring to be the next Richie Winn? What do you have for them?
I actually do have something. I've been thinking a lot about goals, and setting goals, and it's a little bit slower to start out the year than it has been, relatively the past couple years, because economic reasons.
Mm,
Chinese New Year started a little bit earlier this year, plethora of things. So I kept thinking about, setting daunting goals. Like, I like to set goals that scare me, I feel like a lot to chew off. And, I've been talking about this with Cameron and Lizzie, my other two reps, is, set a big goal, but set small goals to be able that lead up to that. You know,
mm,
if you want to grow $500,000 in margin this year, that's great. Find out how much in margin you need to add monthly, how many accounts that equates to, and find out who's in your pipeline. Quantify your pipeline, choose who you're going to target every week, pick a close date, follow up with them. Follow up is seriously the most important thing you could do,
mhm.
and just execute. Don't spend too much time planning, just go out and do it. And so that's been heavily on my mind as we push toward big goals this year. And I've reflected, and I've every year I've hit my goal, that's what I've done. What can I do today? What can I do in a week? What can I do in a month? Not what do I have to hit by December 31st, 2023. So as long as it eventually leads to that, just set small interim goals to be able to accomplish that.
I love that. Great way to close out that conversation. I love ending these with a random question. If you've listened to the
Yeah.
podcast before, people tend to look forward to this and they have no idea where I'm going to go with it. So that's why it's fun for
Okay.
me. But
Great.
hardest sale you've ever had to make?
So I guess there could be a couple different categories. Is there a certain
I'm
like
leaving it
most
open ended.
painful?
I'm leaving it open ended.
Oh man, hardest sale.
For those that are watching the video, he's sweating a little bit.
I
So
am sweating a little bit. I mean, I've had people yell and scream at me a lot. I'm trying to think of one that was yelling and screamed at me that's now a good customer of mine. Okay, I do have one. I got a customer of mine. He manufactures different types of vending machines. And I was connected to him. He's in California. I was connected to him through one of my customers here in Utah. He owns a CBD company. He ordered some vending machines to, disperse his CBD product. And so I called him. The guy was just rude. And he was like, "Yeah, I don't care. Stop calling me."
Yeah.
And but I had to move these machines for my customer. He's, "Hey, I need these machines." So I called him every day, and he's like, "Stop calling me. I'll let you know when it's ready." And then my customer on the other end was pulling me the other way. But eventually got it moving. I'd call. My goal with him was try to make him laugh every time. He's one of the most crotchety guys that you'll ever talk to. Did a great job on the shipment, and now he calls me pretty much every other day. Usually to complain about something, in an ironic, sarcastic way. Not that
Yeah.
I've done, but got a great relationship now, and he's gonna have his biggest year ever.
That's awesome. Richie, thank you so much for your wealth of knowledge, your time. Really appreciated. And just keep crushing out there, man.
Hey, thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me on. Anyone, if you're struggling or need some help, feel free to reach out. I'll always pick up.
Richie Winn, everybody. Thanks, buddy. We'll talk to you later.
Hey, see you, Paul.
Thank you so much for listening to the Ideas Exchange podcast presented by InXpress. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to show us some love and support, please share it out with others on social media or leave us a rating and review. If you want to know more about what InXpress is, visit inxpress.com to find out what they do and how they can help you and your business. That's InXpress.com. Thank you so much, and we will catch you in the next episode.